Imagine you finally found food. Not berries, not roots, a massive herd of antelope. You've spent 2 days tracking them across dry ground. Every footprint, every broken branch, every pile of fresh droppings has led you here. Your family hasn't eaten properly in days, and if this hunt works, everyone survives another week. You tighten your grip on your spear. You're close enough to hear them breathing. Then, a single drop lands on your shoulder. Another, then another. Within minutes, the sky completely disappears. Rain crashes down so hard it hurts. The wind changes direction. The herd vanishes behind a wall of water. Their tracks dissolve into mud before your eyes. Everything you spent days learning is erased in minutes. And that's when you realize something terrifying. You weren't hunting anymore. Now you were trying to survive the rain itself. Today, rain means umbrellas, warm coffee, maybe canceling your plans. You hear it tapping against your window while you scroll your phone. Some people even pay for apps that play rain sounds so they can fall asleep faster. But for most of human history, that exact same sound meant something completely different. It meant your fire might die, your shelter might collapse, your children might freeze. A river you crossed yesterday might suddenly become impossible to cross, and the predators that couldn't find you yesterday might be walking straight toward your cave tonight. Rain wasn't background noise. It was one of nature's most effective ways of reminding humans they weren't in control. But strangely, the water itself wasn't the biggest enemy. The first real danger was something you couldn't even see. Heat, or rather, the speed at which your body lost it. Humans are unusual animals. We're fantastic at running, excellent at sweating, pretty good at surviving hot environments, but take away our dry skin, and suddenly we're incredibly fragile. A soaking wet human loses body heat dramatically faster than a dry one. Now imagine you're wearing nothing but an animal hide. The hide weighs twice as much once it's soaked. Every gust of wind steals more warmth. Night is only a few hours away, and temperatures don't need to fall below freezing to become deadly. Even cool evenings can push a wet body toward hypothermia, especially if you're exhausted, hungry, and already burning calories just to stay alive. That's why archaeologists believe many prehistoric campsites weren't simply chosen because they looked comfortable. They were chosen because they stayed dry. Rock overhangs, south-facing cave entrances, natural ledges protected from prevailing winds. To us, they look like random places. To an ancient human, they were the prehistoric equivalent of finding a hotel during a hurricane. But finding shelter created another problem, because everyone else wanted the exact same place. Imagine dozens of frightened animals fleeing the storm. Deer, boar, wolves, hyenas, even big cats. None of them enjoy standing in freezing rain either. Now picture one dry cave. Only one. Who gets it? Suddenly rain wasn't just weather. It became a competition. And archaeology has uncovered some chilling evidence of just how dangerous that competition became. In caves across southern Africa, researchers have found layers where leopard bones and human bones appear together, not thousands of years apart. The same occupation layers. Even worse, some human skulls carry puncture marks almost perfectly matching the spacing of leopard canine teeth. Think about that image for a second. Outside, rain pounds against the rocks. Inside, a family huddles around fading firelight. And somewhere in the darkness, a leopard decides this cave looks like home too. Except, that wasn't always the worst visitor, because rain changes something else most people never think about. It changes sound. Normally, you hear danger long before you see it. A twig snaps, leaves rustle, hooves scrape against stone. Rain erases all of that. Everything becomes one endless roar. Predators can move closer. Prey becomes harder to detect. Even members of your own group disappear just a few meters away behind sheets of falling water. Your greatest survival tool, your hearing, practically stops working. It's like trying to survive while someone blasts static directly into your ears. And that's when fear starts playing tricks on your mind. Every shadow looks alive. Every movement could be a wolf. Every splash sounds like footsteps. Your brain begins filling in threats that may not even exist. Modern psychologists call this hypervigilance. Ancient humans simply called it staying alive. But while fear kept your eyes wide open, another invisible danger kept getting stronger. Water, not the rain, the rivers. Most people think rivers rise slowly. That's because we've built dams, flood barriers, warning systems. Ancient humans had none of those. A peaceful stream you crossed that morning could become a raging wall of brown water before sunset. Flash floods don't politely announce themselves. They arrive, and prehistoric people learn this lesson the hard way. Inside several European caves, archaeologists have discovered thick layers of flood sediment covering old campfires, stone tools, and food remains. The evidence suggests something terrifying. People didn't always leave in time. Some camps were simply swallowed, others were abandoned forever. Imagine waking in the middle of the night. Your feet feel cold. You assume it's rain dripping through the ceiling. Then you realize the water isn't dripping, it's rising. Your fire hisses. Your sleeping area disappears beneath muddy water. Children are crying. Everyone grabs whatever they can carry, but outside, the storm is still getting worse. That wasn't camping. That was evacuation. Thousands of years before anyone invented the word. And even if you escaped, you weren't safe, because now your biggest advantage had become your greatest weakness. You were human. Humans depend on memory. You remember where fruit trees grow, where animals migrate, where dangerous cliffs begin. Rain erased those mental maps. Footpaths disappeared. Landmarks changed. Dry valleys became rivers. Entire hunting routes became lakes. Imagine spending your whole life learning one landscape, only to wake up and discover it suddenly speaks a different language. But perhaps nothing terrified ancient humans more than what rain threatened next, because once the fire started struggling, everything else began collapsing with it. Not just warmth, not just cooking, everything. And that's where the story takes an even darker turn. A dying fire doesn't make much noise. It doesn't explode. It doesn't suddenly disappear. It simply gets quieter. The bright orange flames shrink into glowing red embers. The smoke becomes thicker. The crackling stops. And every person sitting around it knows exactly what that means. Panic. Today, if your campfire goes out, you grab a lighter, maybe a box of matches. Worst case, you drive to the nearest gas station. An ancient human had no such luxury. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans clearly knew how to control fire. Archaeological sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa and Kisum Cave in modern-day Israel preserve convincing evidence that our ancestors repeatedly used fire over incredibly long periods. But here's the mystery. Using fire and making fire are not necessarily the same thing. Many archaeologists believe early humans often depended on preserving existing flames rather than creating new ones whenever they wanted. That completely changes the stakes. If your fire died during a week-long storm, you might not simply be cold, you might lose the only flame your group possessed. Imagine watching the last glowing ember fade while rain drums outside your shelter. Nobody says anything. Nobody needs to. Everyone understands the same horrifying thought. How do we get it back? That's why keeping a fire alive became a full-time job. Someone constantly adjusted the fuel. Someone shielded it from drafts. Someone searched for wood that looked impossible to find. Because here's something surprisingly clever. Even after hours of heavy rain, not every tree is soaked. The lower dead branches beneath dense evergreen canopies often stay remarkably dry. Split open a wet log, and the wood hidden inside may still burn. Birch bark contains oils that ignite even when damp. Ancient people didn't know the chemistry. They simply knew it worked. Generation after generation, that knowledge spread because somebody had discovered it the hard way, probably after almost freezing to death. And eventually humans became even more ingenious. The famous Ötzi, the Iceman, preserved for over 5,000 years in the Alps, carried an entire fire kit. Not just sparks, backup tinder, pieces of tinder fungus, tools for striking fire, everything carefully packed because losing fire was simply not an acceptable risk. Imagine carrying your emergency battery everywhere because electricity might never come back. That was fire, portable survival. But once the flames were stable, something unexpected happened. People stopped waiting. They started creating. Rain trapped bodies. It didn't trap minds. If you've ever been stuck inside during a storm, you've probably started organizing something, cleaning, fixing, building. Humans hate wasting time. Ancient humans were no different, except their projects weren't hobbies. They determined whether the next hunt succeeded. Archaeologists see this pattern everywhere. Inside caves, they don't just find finished stone tools. They find thousands upon thousands of tiny flakes. Each chip represents another strike, another adjustment, another attempt at making a sharper blade. It's like walking into a modern workshop and finding sawdust covering the floor. And yet, the story doesn't end there. Because while rain trapped ancient humans inside, something else was happening. Around those fires, inside those caves, humans were learning, creating, adapting, and slowly becoming something more. The rain may have made survival harder, but it also forced humans to think differently, to prepare, to work together, and to turn every storm into another lesson. And that story is only just beginning.